How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another live Q&A on Tier Talk. It's going to be a great live Q&A. I have Russ Hamilton who will be on shortly. We'll be answering your questions, anything that you want to know about working in corrections. And if there is a question that we don't know the answer to, we will definitely be finding out that answer and probably doing a whole show on it because that's what we do. Now, guys, be advised the show is sponsored to you by three entities. We have American Military University. So if you guys are looking to go back to school, seek higher level education, American Military University is a great place to go. Very supportive of the show Tier Talk, but also very supportive of what we do in corrections, which I think is pretty cool. And then we also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And we have a new sponsor. Yes, we do. We have a new sponsor now. Let me just get to it. The new sponsor is Shaya USA. Shaya USA is the world's leading weapon, cell phone, and contraband detection system manufacturer for corrections. For more information, contact Joe Vasquez at 440-561-7615. He's a subject matter expert. He's passionate about our industry, and he will take good care of you. So, guys, when you call him, mention Tier Talk, and maybe they'll give you a little bit of a discount if you're looking for a metal detector or one of the wands. Hey, Russ, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, Anthony, how's it going today?
Good. Hey, Russ, I'm going to share it out real quick. So do you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Oh, of course not. So my name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started my career way back in 1989 at San Quentin State Prison. Later on, I promoted and went to a smaller prison in the Sierra Foothills. After that, I retired, and then I came back, did some more time as an officer, and then eventually I ended up at a brand new juvenile detention facility in my county. I now work for a private company that deals with, there's some background feed there, that deals with probationers and parolees that are at a local probation department near me. We do reentry and rehabilitation work.
Hey, guys, there's questions already coming in. First off, let's say hello. Hello, Sergeant Smith, 807 from Kentucky. What's up? We got Steve Menard, Guardian RFID, in the house.
Oh,
we also got Patrick Roberts. Yeah, we know Steve, right?
Yeah, man.
We also got... Yeah, I think he's almost as big as you, Russ. We also got Patrick Roberts. Good to see you, Rob. Oh, we got Hulette. Hey, Anthony and Russ. Good to see you guys. And we got CKez. Thanks for all that you guys do for corrections. We're all so grateful. I appreciate that. And guys, this is a live Q&A, so keep the questions coming. We do have our first question. Now, mind you guys, we also get questions not just from people in the profession, but people looking to understand what we do in the profession. So our first question, oh, by the way, Jesse Dolman, what's up? Thanks, Anthony, for the great online community you created. Unfortunately, I had to listen to my loved ones who were too worried about me becoming a New York State corrections officer. But your videos, I think we missed a little part of it. All right, so we do have some questions coming in. Jesse Dolman's been following us for quite some time. So, Jess, whatever choice you made, I get it, but you always be family to us, man. You've been supportive since day one. But your videos have definitely helped me become a better security officer. Hey, can I tell you something, Jess? You're a brother in my mind. I'm going to tell you something. Security, very important job. So let me thank you for what you do, and always thank you for being a part of our community. We do got some questions coming in. Hey, Pat, 22 years in Oklahoma. CO. All right, here's the first question. I saw it right here. It's from Kelsey McCullough. How can you avoid being raped by an inmate? So they went hard on this one.
Yeah.
So you want to go first, Russ?
Yeah. So let's just talk about basic safety. That's obviously a concern. We saw that recently in Houston, and where a female lieutenant was attacked. They had let this inmate from one area travel up to her area, and he wasn't even supposed to be there, and he took advantage of that. And it's a sad, horrible, it's a tragic thing. Some of the things that we have to keep in mind are, and I don't know the specifics there, what could have happened to have changed that. First of all, when you're letting an inmate back out, he was supposed to be going to the restroom. You need to make sure that inmate follows along the route he's supposed to go. You need to make sure that anytime eyes are not on you, that someone knows where you are. Keeping certain types of equipment in good operating condition, whether it's a panic button, whether it's a radio, can help all of that. Sometimes security things just break down and there's miscommunication, and that appears to be what happened in that case. Overall, I say, though, partner up, always be with someone if you possibly can, and make sure that you're able to, adequately equip yourself when it comes down to that time where maybe you're having to get into a fight, maybe you're having to get into a struggle, and that you use every tool at your disposal. Hopefully institutions are starting to get, more pepper spray out there on the line, more batons, more tasers, and, tools that we can use. But overall, the tool that we need to learn to use the most is what's up here. This can keep you safe, even if your facility is not, maximizing what your potential is as an officer. You have to be thinking scenarios through on the fly and be able to know when something is safe and when something's not safe.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I mean, not Russ kind of covered everything there, but I want to kind of uh, compliment what Patrick said too. Never get complacent with an inmate. Never get too comfortable with an inmate. You have to realize something too. Your behaviors can also invite the inmate to that if you're not aware of the behaviors that you're doing. So getting too close to an inmate, constantly looking for that inmate's attention, not really holding them to that role of an inmate and you being a professional staff member. If the inmate's trying to flirt or compliment, you need to, hey, not the place, and let them know that it's you that's setting that standard, not the agency. It's you. You're coming here to do a job. This dialogue's not supposed to occur because, believe it or not, you may have inmates that, it's sad to say, they may rape a staff member, but they also may feel that the staff member wanted it. So they may, in their delusion, may believe that there's some relationship between them because of the way the staff member has been receptive, which even means even if you don't respond back, an inmate gives you a compliment, it's inappropriate, and you ignore it, that's just as bad as accepting it. So having said that, be careful with your behavior towards the inmates. And again, show them that you're the one in control. And like Russ said, know where your resources are. If you're going out of sight, radio to your officer or to a supervisor, let them know where you're going so everybody knows where you're at all times. And again, it's a tough environment, but if it's controlled and you have backup on the floor, hopefully shit like that doesn't happen. I mean, usually when something like that happens, you have to go back and investigate because most likely there was a failure somewhere. Definitely I believe there'll be a failure somewhere. I like what Steve says too. Your appearance can attract an inmate as well. Flashy nails, smelling good, lots of makeup, etc. Look the part of an officer, not an available woman or man. That's powerful. That's extremely powerful because sometimes for a lot of places there's no dress codes for civilian staff members. And that's tough for an officer because they'll see the staff member going through the metal detector and they don't know how they can comment because the problem is they got to be careful too because it can leave them open to an EED complaint. So, it would be good if there would be some type of dress policy for the civilian staff members because it would give us something that we're able to enforce instead of making it look like it's discretionary because, again, as an officer, that's touchy, man, right? I mean, Rush, have you ever seen a civilian that may be wearing something a little bit inappropriate? But how do you, if there's no dress code, how do you approach that as a officer without fearing that this person can come and put in an ED complaint?
Yeah, there should always be a dress code is my feeling. Everything that exists in that operations manual, the administrative manual, whatever it is that your institution or department calls it, you have to be able to call upon that. If you see something going on that's, not correct and that could do that, that could, impinge on that safety and security. So, just looking at from that standpoint, you need to have that conversation with that individual no matter what. It's not you, it's them, rest assured. And you know what, we may not like the fact that we operate in an environment where there are rules that cut back on some of these personal freedoms and expressions that we have, but there's no way around that if we really want to have a truly safe and secure environment. So you have to be the one sometimes to be the impact player. Sometimes you have to be the one that takes the hit on something like that. But you know what? You have to point it out each and every time.
Yeah, guys, sometimes if there is a concern at that metal detector, whatever it is, when that civilian's going in, if the officer addresses it, and let's say the civilian, calls for the supervisor, if the supervisor sees something that's a little bit weary or a little bit funny, supervisor should hold the ground and show support of the officer, and let's see where the complaint goes. I mean, again, you're not being disrespectful with it. Again, you have to still be professional, but sometimes you have to challenge a perspective and then see, because that's how policies could be developed. So definitely led into a good question. All right, Colette has a great one. We'll have Russ go first with this. There's many ways you can answer this, by the way, but maybe we'll pick our favorite one. But what qualities should a correctional officer have?
Oh, you know what? There's so many that you can name, but if I were just to try and limit myself to something, it's the ability to apply things as you learn them. I see officers out there that struggle, that have a hard time learning things, and even if they learn something, they're not quite sure how to apply it. They don't necessarily have that gift of gab and be able to just talk to people. So maybe I would, lean toward that, communication angle, being able to, absorb knowledge from communication and be able to parrot it back in a way that they're able to command things, that they have that command presence that involves, the verbal skills to be able to sort things out. I've seen so many times where, that particular skill stood by me and allowed me to, and I hate the word de-escalate, by the way, but for lack of a better term, de-escalate the situation.
Yeah, for me, obviously, there's a lot of qualities. I believe that being a good correctional officer is also having a growth mindset because you're learning every day. Especially
Excellent.
because
Yeah.
the inmates are learning. So you have to have that growth mindset. But if I could say right now, if I had to work next to a correctional officer, so it's not even what I'm looking at for myself, but what I would expect from a partner. The first thing I would say, and again, there's a lot, but I would really lean on, and I'm sure everybody agrees, just good sense of integrity, good sense of trust, people that are going to do the job for the right reasons, purpose driven. I think when you have a good sense of integrity, it's a lot harder for inmates to play you. You have a purpose, you know what you have to do going in. And the expectation isn't just what the agency has on you, it's also what you have on yourself. Integrity is the old saying, it's doing the right thing even when nobody's watching, and that really is what we need in corrections. A lot of people would tell you, what would you do if the supervisor was in the unit? How would you treat the inmates then? It doesn't matter. It's what would you do because it's the right thing to do. That's the key. So I would look for the number one quality for me would be integrity, just to kind of have someone there that you can trust to do the job, even when no one's directly supervising them. But again, there's a lot of qualities, and I think it's a great question. Okay, so question from CCAS. How do you feel about corrections going mainly to treatment? It's hard for us officers to see that direction. You want me to go first on this, Russ, or?
I'm willing to take that one.
All right, now remember, Russ, you're in rehabilitation now.
I am, but
So let me hear
I
your
am, but
thoughts.
there's no substitute for safety and security, right? And I know that there's a lot of hype about corrections moving toward that whole treatment thing, and treatment is fine, but correctional officers overall, they can have a role in that, but it's a limited role because we really have to mind what we do as far as opening ourselves to being vulnerable to manipulation. All right. Being man, I hate this kind of terminology, but having to go in there and have that rapport with the inmate where we're having to talk to them about deep subjects and be able to put them on the right path, which is something that I do every single day now. It's not the best thing for a correctional officer to be doing, to be quite honest, because what happens is you start to blend those two roles, and then as those two roles start to diverge, people that aren't really aware of what they're doing, they start to buy into that whole mindset, which is something you have to do to a degree to be able to reach those people. But what happens is you start to really think that your job is to rehabilitate them, and it's not. Your job as a correctional officer is to provide for safety and security of the public, then of the staff, and then thirdly of the inmates. And it's hard to switch back and forth between those. So if they want officers to start taking on more of that type of responsibility, they have to have some seasoned, hardened people that really know about manipulation and know how to stop it from happening to them. And I think that, some of the people, and I don't want to use this, I don't want everyone to get all, puffed up about this, but there's some people out there that are good people that have that do-gooder outlook, and they tend to think that because they feel they're doing good that they actually are, and they're actually being manipulated. And so it's a very hard, steep, slippery thing to get a hold of, and I don't think that people can do both equally well.
I want to add on that because there's definitely a balance with that too. So I want to mention something. I do agree with Russ. So here it is, guys. There's a balance of both worlds. We know where corrections is shifting, and we want to be a part of that. So there's a balance where you have to work with the service providers 100%. And there's a partnership there, but there's also our primary role. If you're working with the supervisor, it's because you're compromising a little bit to their primary role, just like they're going to work with you and compromise a little bit when it comes to safety and security. And there, I would say there's like a 75-25, 75-25. So I'm going to work with the rehabilitator, make sure they have what they need, give them, 25% of that. And in return, they're going to focus on 75% of that program and whatever it is, because there's a partnership. You can't rehabilitate without safety and security in the background. We know that. We are the canvas. We set the template for all that to occur. On the other side of it all, though, I would like to think that they should be very mindful when it comes to safety and security. But having said that, that's where we become the fail-safe. So, with that said, we do have to worry that we could always be manipulated, right? That has to be in the back of our mind. But that's not an excuse for us to not interact with the inmate population. I want people to realize that. I mean, they'll be like, well, I'm told I can't talk to the inmates because at any moment they can manipulate. No, no, no. You're taught that as, hey, keep in mind, remember your role, but you still have to engage. It's like, well, I'm taking universal precaution. Well, universal precaution, what does that really mean? It still means to move forward. Just be cautious in your effort. It does not mean to stop. So I want people to realize that because corrections is shifting, we have to be a part of that. So with that said, we have to have our mind open that we are going to have a service. And what that service is the service is really helping the providers accomplish what it is in a safe and secured environment so we can get these inmates back to where they need to be, which we're not going to be able to hold them forever, guys. So they're going to have to get released. But with that said, guys, we have to allow ourselves to see that change, because I'm going to tell you something. It's going to happen regardless. We can go back and do channels of the old way and go back to what we were doing 6 or 7 years ago. But all that's going to do is we're going to be like recreational complainers. We're just going to be complaining. And in the end, we're just still going to be here and everybody else is going to be over there. And Okay, still wishing that it was the good old days. Guys, I know for a fact it's never going to go back to the way it was. So what we have to do is we have to find some way to be a part of the way it is. Because if not, it's going to keep on moving. And the concern is that when it comes to that, and I think Russ would agree, we're not looking for obstacles to move forward. We're looking for good, honest attempts. And I'm saying, in the end, guys, if anybody sits here and really believes that we're going to go back to how corrections was 25 or 30 years ago, it's not. It's not. So what we need to do, honestly, is all get on the same page. But I will say this. I will say this. If ever there was a chance for us to work as a united front, ever, custody, civilians, whatever it is. This is the moment now, because this is the moment where we all can get on the same page, find out what the vision is, how our missions work together to achieve that mission, and go at it with a united force. If we want change that can help us as custody, we're going to have to work with the program providers, and they're going to have to say, hey, if we want to be effective, this is what we need from custody. And now we have the people who's got the ears speaking on our behalf. Would you agree with that, Rusto? You think you believe it is a good time to try to get that partnership and not be an obstacle, because we are moving forward. I mean, it just is
I,
what it
I
is.
think that I think that the thing is you have to have input into the process, first of all, okay? So that input comes at the price of you have to be seen as part of the solution. The way that I personally look at it and what I do now is I don't glamorize the fact that I'm helping these individuals at all. I look at it as this is what I'm paid to do. This is the task that's been given me. What can I do to do it to the best of my ability? And the one that I'm ultimately responsible for, it's not the guy that's on probation or parole that I'm dealing with. It's the entity that hired me, which is the county that I work for. I work for them in order to try and get, reentry and rehabilitation established with these individuals. I'm not out there to try and feel good about myself and think about, how much I'm putting into these people. Ultimately, the result is that, yes, some of them are changing. Some of them are being afforded an opportunity to step away from the criminal lifestyle. But my allegiance is not to the participant. My allegiance is to the person that's hired me, to the vendor, as it were, which is the county.
Yeah, and guys, don't forget too, by giving the inmate structure, some levels of expectation, that is going to help towards their rehabilitation. Being a good role model, doing what's expected of you could change their view on how they see authority. I mean, be honest with you guys, when you're working in a prison or a jail, you have a lot of forced interactions with people that you wouldn't normally have interactions with if you were in the streets. These were people that you would avoid. But in corrections, we have to have those interactions. I mean, you could be a cop walking the streets and see a bunch of, let's say, gang members, and we'll just walk right by them, whatever. Us, we can't do that because they're in our house. They can't run back into the projects. They're in our house. So we have these forced interactions. There's a good chance where you could create something positive within some level of expectation, still within the guidance of, enforcing the rules, but just in how you do it, how you express the rules. Doesn't mean you're soft. It's just, this is why it has to be done. Build a level of understanding. And then I'll tell you something, guys. In the end, when the person gets out, maybe they won't have that generalized animosity towards a person in uniform because, hey, Ganji, I remember I had an inmate coming out and told me that I had three things against me when I started this profession. Mind you, I started in a female facility. They told me I was white, I was a male, and I was an officer. By the time that inmate, took off, was done with her time and gone, she said, the judgment based on all that turn out to be true. It doesn't matter if you're white, an officer. It doesn't matter if you're a male. It matters how you treat people. And in this case here, I treated this person with levels of expectation that I needed her to meet, but more importantly, I believe she could meet them, which she did. So having said that, I really do think that just in your daily interactions as an officer, how you carry yourself, the example you are. I mean, that could lend a lot towards how someone needs to be in the real world. So I just think it could be. I think someone here said it on the comments here, but your interactions have a wonderful chance to create something positive, even in the environment that we're in. And again, I thought that was a great question. Hey, Casey says, do you think a sergeant should be working on the floor, or should the sergeant be supervising coworkers and making sure that the facility is running smoothly and safely? Let me bow out because Russ has already answered it in his head.
Okay. So here's the thing. Those coworkers are out there on the floor. They are out there in that area. That sergeant needs to be out there watching what they're doing and, making sure that his area, that his span of responsibility, that his span of control is operating smoothly. It's not up to him to operate the whole prison and keep all of those things going smoothly, safely, and in a secure manner. What he should be focusing on is his area. And those people that are in his area, that are within his span of control, guess what? Because he's out there on the floor, because he's out there on the yard, he gets to have input. He gets to have input to train them. He gets to have input to having them reflect back to him how things are going, what they're observing in the way of, what the STGs are doing, what the different issues are with regards to the safety and security of their area. So I think that that particular question, it sounds like maybe comes from a smaller facility where maybe a sergeant has a little bit more impact on a facility-wide kind of span. So what a sergeant should be doing, though, his span of responsibility, his span of control, and the people that are directly under him, that he's been told, these are your people, you're going to supervise them. I hope that makes some sense. Maybe we can follow up if that's not quite what I should have got to.
Yeah, I think, again, I like what the person said. I think it's depending on the structure. So let's say this is the immediate frontline supervisor. So here's the thing, guys. Supervisors should be seen, accessible. I get it. But they have to allow the officers to do their job. They do, and they also have to allow the officers to feel the freedom of doing their job. So with that said, for me as a supervisor, unless needed, I would tour the unit twice. By the way, I would tour the unit just to look for things, nothing major. But most of the time, I would let the inmates know through my actions, like, "Oh, you have a concern? Did you see the officer first?" Blah blah blah. I always make sure that everything was filtered through the officer first. But having said that, the inmates still knew that if there was a concern, I would get to it. But I still would want to talk to the officer first. They needed to know that me and that officer were connected, because I'm not going to go into that unit and allow any inmate to circumvent that officer's level of authority. I do not believe that they should be on that unit all day. I don't. Because you have frontline supervisors should have bigger areas, but most of the time they should also start stepping back and letting them navigate their way through and only be called as needed. I truly do believe that. I think supervisors have other stuff that they got to get done. And the last thing you need is a supervisor to be on you, micromanaging everything you do. So there's a level of empowerment that you give the individual, one by, I trust you, this is stuff you can do. But more importantly is, I don't have to be here to watch you do it. And that also, be honest with you, we talked about it before. I think as rookies, I always tell people you have to write things up. I get it. But as you move up, discretion, running the unit doesn't always mean you're writing charges or call for the supervisor. Running the unit is having those interactions and, making those directives happen on your own, not always calling the supervisor. So I don't want officers to be reliant on that supervisor to run the unit. So, I agree with Russ 100%. The supervisor, yes, should be accessible, but not easily accessible to the inmates, because there's someone there before that supervisor should even be spoken to. So if you have that supervisor constantly on scene, inmates are always going to look to manipulate that next higher level of authority because that's a bigger area of responsibility. So if there's a sergeant constantly on scene coming to the inmate's needs, they're never going to go to the officer. Why? Why waste energy when I could just go to the sergeant? Same thing as if there's a lieutenant. Why waste energy going to the sergeant if I could just go to lieutenant or the next tier up? That's why you also have to be very careful when you answer an inmate's concerns. Because if you answer an inmate's concerns where, you know, it's like they have a concern, all of a sudden you run down there, let's say admin to answer it. Well, they know they could do it again. So what do? They call admin again, and all you're doing is disenfranchising the front line. You have to make sure, even when that happens, that you as admin or whatever, the higher level, still goes back to that officer and let it be known to the inmates that you're still going to go to the officer, you're in the officer's house, and then you'll listen to the officer and how we can fix it. But whatever you do is, if you give those inmates direct access to the supervisor, they will circumvent you, the officer, to get to that supervisor. Hopefully, we answered it. That's a good question, though, too. Okay, so this is a unique question, Russ. I figure you could attack this. How long should it be until a correctional officer is at their top pay bracket? Neighboring county is higher on 64K their first full year. Our county, you have to do 20 years to be at 64K. The one thing about this, real quick, before we start, guys, is we become in desperate mode. We become in such desperation that we're hiring the pay to bring people in, but we're not doing anything to keep people in for the long run. So you get this jump at, let's say, 64K, but then the max out could be 80. It's like, why even bother if that's what the max out is? So unless there's a way you can balance it, and let's say if you could start with 64K, then your maxed out pay should be somewhere in the hundreds. You know, you're going to get new people in, but it's not going to be longevity. But what's your thoughts, Russ? Stepwise, what is your thoughts about that?
Okay, so corrections is going through this time now where the pendulum, thankfully, is starting to swing back the other way. So you're starting to see more states, especially like Nebraska. If you look at that one, that Nebraska and I think Minnesota have really started this thing where they're starting to increase that pay. Other places, in order to compete, and that's what the market is doing. It's not the free market because this is the government. They're going to have to up their pay too. The thing about jails is this: the idea is they want correctional officers to come in there and work and be part of the community. So ideally, pay would not be everything. It would not be the be all end all. It still has to be within that range. And it sounds like what you're talking about is there's a great disparity between neighboring counties. You ought to see that start to swing back. The other county is going to have to do something to retain people at that point. They may not be able to unless they have some things working for them where they can offset the pay with maybe better living conditions. Maybe it's a better county to just, be in overall. Maybe they have some people that are more loyal, but it's a tough thing. But in the end, you're going to have to see this wash out. And that kind of an imbalance is usually transitory because somebody has to step up and start competing back. I expect that's what you'll see in pretty short order in a situation like that, especially with the current state of affairs in corrections overall.
Yeah, and just to add on my end, I would say 5 to 7 years is a good steps. But again, 5 to 7 years, 5 to 7 year steps, because that gives a chance for maybe a contract to give a little something more too. So, I think that it's great to, if someone maxes out, maybe the first couple of steps, could be a little small, but then there's a little bit more motivation as maybe the final 3 or 4 steps are good jumps. So again, you could have a good starting bring people in, but have small subsequent steps, maybe a few after that, but then the last couple could be good jumps because that's what's going to kind of keep people on the long end. And then by the time they get their 7 steps in, now we have another contract raise. So even the people that are maxed out, they have a chance to make a couple of bucks more. But guys, it's tough because right now the focus has to be on both maintaining and also inviting. So, I get it. You want to put everybody at this high rate at first, but that's going to take away from the end of it all. You're putting people in at 64,000, but in order to make up that difference, people are maxing out at 80. Yeah, guys, people that are coming in at 64,000 don't expect to make 80 at the end of 20 years. I'm sorry, it's just not. They don't expect to. Oh yeah, I'm going to make 64,000, and then 20 years later, I only go up 16,000. No, guys. I mean, you gotta keep it balanced. I mean, a good starting salary, small steps for the first couple of steps, and the last steps will be the leaps. This way, people want to stick around for that sixth or seventh step. And then again, by the time they max out, a couple years later, another contract comes in and another big step. But it really does depend, because as I said, jails compete with prisons, and it does matter with how much staffing, has to be paid out. So sometimes counties will make a lot more because the state may have a lot more officers that they have to pay out. So Jersey's good with pay, can't complain. I believe the officers are going to be pushing close to 100,000, if not more, as a base salary, but they have a lot of steps too. So, it's tough. You have to kind of just figure out what you can do. I remember when I almost got hired by a local police department, and their starting pay back in 2002 was only 25,000. I was like, there's no way I can do this. Couldn't make that sacrifice, because I would have to sacrifice for 3 years before I started making something real. But then by 7 years, I didn't look that far at that time, but by 7 years, you're breaking over 100,000. But the problem is the first 3 years, couldn't do it. So I didn't look at. So if you have something that's too low at the beginning and you have to struggle, you're not looking at the end, because I can't make it through the first 3 years. So there's got to be a balance, not overly crazy, but something that says I can rough this out for a couple of years in the end, not to where it's so low that the other end is so great. So it's a balance. All right. So next question. That was a great question, James. I appreciate that. We never discussed that before. Hopefully, we answered it. All right, Russ. Russ is the guy going first. Tips for minimum correctional officers. So he means minimum security, because no correctional officer is minimum. Tips for a correctional officer working in minimum security where concerns are different from a medium max facility. So questions. It's a great question, Russ. So you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay. So, you know what? Don't underestimate the potential for violence inside a minimum security facility. The same potential is there, and even more, because those guys tend to be able to get their hands on things that you can't inside of a maximum. I remember probably one of the worst riots I was in a level 1 facility, and we had cuffing operations. I think I cuffed up over 400 people. So don't negate it, don't minimize it, don't get yourself into that mindset that, hey, this is minimum, because I've been hurt in a maximum facility, and I've been hurt in a minimum facility about 4 times as many times. So wrong mindset, first of all. Second of all, you know what? You just have to adjust to some of the things that go on in that facility, but that doesn't mean that you should take them for granted. A lot of times you'll see officers and they're operating on that margin, and they are not in the right mindset because they've allowed themselves to, get down to the point where they just merely want to, go along to get along. And they'll let things fester, they'll let things develop, and then the next thing you know, you're having a critical incident on this supposed, low-level facility kind of place. So the thing is you want to keep yourself sharp. You want to be that sharpening stone for your other fellow officers and not get complacent in that. I talk a lot about, the complacency of routine. Well, yeah, you have a lot of routine. You may not have long lockdowns, but I guarantee you that somewhere in your facility, low level as it may be, there are felonies occurring on a daily basis. And if you're not out there rooting those things out, if you're not out there being preemptive and preventative in your mindset, then you'll have a big blow up. We had, I can't remember the name of it was like Black Mountain or something like that, where we had a hostage situation at a fire camp, believe it or not. So like I say, you got to trim that mindset and understand that, if you're an officer out on the streets, just because you're not, patrolling the projects does not mean you are not in danger, right? You might be patrolling an area that has very little crime, but that doesn't mean that crime isn't going to find you. So stay sharp, stay professional, root things out, become proactive. And I think you're going to find that the supposed facility where nothing ever happens, a lot more happens than people know, because people aren't in there getting searched like they should, not getting, held accountable like they should, not doing your gang validations like you should. So, you know what? Stay on it. Stay hard.
Yeah, I want to add something on that. So minimum security. Sometimes you can become a bit complacent because you think that the inmates may be more focused on the way out than they are on the way in. And obviously, in maximum security, they're probably looking to be more comfortable at the time. So find a staff that they can manipulate. But you got to realize something, even in min, our interactions with them are going to be greater. So there's higher odds there. But also, inmates could still be impulsive. They could get a phone call that their girlfriend's now cheating on them, or something happens and they just decide that to jump because they could be opportunists. In men, there is a greater chance for that opportunity. Now, with that said, all these inmates should be filtered, and you would like to think that, we are putting the best inmates out there. But again, opportunist, impulse. We could only do so much, even in the people who sit in those classification committees. So I would say my tip for you is, even though it's minimum, you have to kind of really check yourself more every day in regards to making sure you're not falling into complacent behaviors. Because I have seen officers work minimum for years and then work a maximum security, maybe on overtime or something, and they're just not there. They're just not fully attentive. They're a little bit more lax. And the scary thing is that they don't know it either. They're interacting with the inmates with their hands in their pockets. Everything about a full min, because it is least restriction, it kind of falls into making you want to be a little bit complacent, because the inmates are given more trust. The environment shows that they're given more trust, but you have to stay alert and not fall into that. Because if the environment is a little bit more permissible, you yourself have to be that final fail safe, which means that if there's not a gate closing behind you right away, you still need to hear one in your head. At the end of the day, this is really about you. So, with that said, I would definitely be running what if scenarios. If there's downtime, I'd still be touring a little bit more. Still, again, I'm not here to socialize with the inmates. Just what's the point? I've walked into minimum units, and a lot of them are, they're chit chatting with the officer, and why they're doing that. There's inmates all over the place, and it's like I'd still say the same thing with the inmates. Hey, what's the point? What do you got going on? Let's keep it quick. Let's keep it moving. But having said that, I think this is a moment where, when you work in that unit, you really have to check yourself. And in the end, I will tell you here's one more tip. If you ever decide to leave a minimum unit to go back into a maximum unit, recommend to your training officer if you could be retrained real quick. Just to cover yourself. I may have some complacent habits. I've been working in min for a while, and I just want to make sure that I'm ready to go back into a maximum security. Because again, for the most part, mindset of the inmate should be, I'm on my way out in a min. For a max unit, it's more of, how do I make my time easier? With the added threat of a min is that's opened, more chances for more chance for inmates to unite. That's another thing. Let's not forget that. Because the area is more opened, lesser staff. So in some places, the supervisor or a response team could be 10, 15 minutes away, because again, there's just this level of trust, which is to me a little bit insane. But I get it. I just think it's a little bit insane. You should always have that response team in the wings, and just be careful. Opportunity can happen at any moment. Inmates could be totally impulsive. So all because you're in a minimum security unit doesn't mean that you're dealing with less impulsive inmates. And I will tell you, if you're on the management side, you got to get programs out there as well. Keep the inmates where they need to be, because sometimes you go to men, it's like, oh, they're getting ready to go out, they're ready to transition. No, they're not, still they're still here. So let's do something to balance the transition, yes, but also give them stuff to keep them where they need to be, keep them programmed, keep them educated. Don't sit there and not provide them with nothing, because in the end, guys, if they sit and do nothing, that makes it worse. So it's a good question. Hopefully we're able to answer it. Okay, so next question. I just want to make sure. Hopefully, we're able to answer that. Welcome 616 Love. She's from Duty Ron. We all know Duty Ron, one of our friends and supporters. Guys, you get a chance, please check out his channel. Okay, so next question comes from Kelsey. What is the right way to deal with a grieving or overly emotional inmate? All right, what do you got, Russ? Want to go first? Want me to go first on this one? Your call.
Yeah, I'll take it. Inmates get bad news from home. They have emotional imbalances, just like the rest of society does. They sometimes partake of substances that they shouldn't have, that causes them to want to fight or want to cry. I've seen that before a lot of times, especially with inmate manufactured alcohol. So there's a lot of root causes that can put that inmate in that overly emotional mindset. The best thing that I've always found to do is try and figure out what that root thing is. If they got some bad news from home, I mean, and he's got some homies that are there for him and is talking to them, that's probably all you need to do. There might be a point at which you might approach him, and this is usually what I told them. I said, hey, look, I don't know what's going on with you. But if you want, I can get a hold of, the priest or some other cleric, or I can have you see mental health. So just letting you know that. That's usually my first approach. If it's gone beyond that, where I feel that this person is going to hurt themselves, or they're going to hurt somebody else, or they're going to act out and do something really silly, that's the time to get a little bit of my backup there, take them into custody, get them over to medical, have them cleared, have medical call over, because you can't just dump them there. You got to tell medical what's going on with this guy, and have them call mental health and activate that particular resource for them. And then, after that, it's a matter of them either talking to this guy. I've had guys that I've put in there, and next thing you know, they're on suicide watch because they really did have a hang up where they were going to, actually go out and hurt themselves. But you just have to try and follow it through and stick with what your policy says, what your procedure says, and just kind of conform that to what their actual level of response to you is.
Remember, guys, when it comes to dealing with an inmate that's emotional, you want to make sure you limit their opportunity during this time when they can be impulsive and do something foolish. A lot of them may not know how to handle the emotion that they're going through. That's why if you're a family member, you have an inmate locked up, don't tell them over the phone. Call social services, call somebody so we can make a proper death notification. Because if you get an inmate that gets a phone call, let's say their mother died, you got to realize something. For them, they're locked up. The grieving part of it all is 10 million times worse. You're making it harder for us because we may not even know about the news. They may just find out it on the phone and then keep quiet about it and then go into their cell, and the next night they hang themselves and, oh, we're the bad guys. We didn't do no, but what about that phone call that they got that no one knew about? Because they're going to be checking the phone calls, and all of a sudden you get a family member who decided to tell the inmate about this without alerting us, so now we can get the proper method in place. What would happen is if you know that there's a death, what you do is you call the social service department, let them know. Social service department will work with custody and mental health to bring the inmate down, and they'll tell them in a very controlled setting, and then they'll decide based on how the inmate handles the news what should be done. Is this inmate that upset that they're going to hurt themselves that we have to limit their opportunity to do that? Or can we trust the inmate to take the news and go back to their cell and be okay? But most of the time right now, guys, when it comes to that, even as an officer, you note the concerns and you have resources that you can call. You call your supervisor first, and then you maybe get a connection with mental health, social, so whatever the concern may be. But we're surrounded by great resources, so we can handle any inmate who's going through an emotional crisis if we know about it. I will tell you something right now. The scariest thing for a CO that's working that unit is there's inmates that are going through emotional crisis that you'll never know, that you'll never see. You know, they don't have the emotions, coming out, surface level, so that's hard. So that's when you have a good CO that's keeping track and maybe senses a little change in something like, Russ is out every day. Why ain't Russ out today? And hey, Russ, what's going on? And well, I got some bad news, blah, blah, blah. So you're talking about an inmate's not going to go up all the time and tell the CO, yo, this happened to me and this is how I feel about it. No, the CO is going to understand by, maybe some change in behavior. And then now it's the CO that's going to say, hey, yo, hey, mental health, do me a favor. I know this guy, Russ, he comes out every day for the last couple of days. He hasn't been coming out. You think someone can talk to him? And if you're mental health, you should be listening to those COs because they could always tell mental health something right there at their face when they're being interviewed, but their real actions start to carry out on the unit. So the officers, the supervisors, the custody side, they know who those inmates really are. So any change in behavior, those officers are on point and they'll be able to kind of attack it when, it's not being said because they see it. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, it's, for me, it was always a matter of, it's an easy matter. If you're in doubt, pick up the telephone, dial that up, tell them what you've seen, and then if they're not Johnny on the spot where you think that they should be, if you think that guy needs to be seen right now, then I press the issue a little bit. If it's kind of a thing, well, yeah, they can get to him tomorrow, and I feel on board with that, then I do that. But remember, they're having to rely on what your observations are and what you know about the situation. And that's kind of one of those things where, over time, as you get more experience and experience that you can, apply the knowledge that you've gained through that, then you become a lot more familiar with what you need to do and the actions you need to take. But never underestimate just a good old CYA move either.
It's a good question. Never answered this before. We'll give it a shot. Can you give some insight into prison law libraries? I can tell you one right now. Got to have them. Inmates are working on their cases all the time. Usually, the prison law library is run by, I guess, the education department. They will usually have some paralegals that are scheduled to work there to help the inmates out through their cases. Usually, the time to the prison library is usually scheduled. It's not an open. It's not open for, it has to be scheduled in accordance with the needs of the facility. Some inmates could ask for extended legal access, but they would have to provide the paperwork that, the courts are requiring this. So then we can go ahead and, make that happen. But they should have access to some online capabilities, but they can't venture off. Like LexisNexis would be one, or something like that, where they can get updates of any changes in the law system. But it's very limited. When I tell you their online access is limited, it's very limited. But again, if you don't do it that way, or if an inmate's not able to use online because of their like a Megan's Law person or whatnot, then you have to be able to provide them what they need. Because again, because they're in a correctional facility and they don't have freedom to the outside world, we have to do what we can when it comes to helping them present their case. And what I mean by that is providing them with the means to do it, so we can't be sued for being an obstacle to it. So I want people to realize that we have to make an effort as a facility as a whole to provide them with the means to be successful if they're battling a case and there's a chance for them to be successful. But we cannot be an obstacle to that. And usually the prison libraries, jail libraries, are probably run, as I said, through the education department. And this would probably fall onto an inmate's rights. So no matter what an inmate does, you cannot take away their access to legal things. So even if the inmate, let's say they were in trouble and they, I don't know, stuck in some management control and they can't go to the law library, because the chance of interacting with people, then you have to have a paralegal, an inmate paralegal, probably be going down those lockdown units to see if the inmates need anything, and they become the resource for the inmate. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Anything with that? Give some insight into prison law libraries?
Yeah, usually the way it works is there's a hierarchy of access to it, and what happens is inmates with deadlines, they get access first. If there's any open slots, inmates that don't have a court case and just want to go there to do some kind of research, then they're allowed. But those individuals with closer and closer deadlines, they get the first bite at the apple, so to speak. Usually, there's a limited number of spaces in there. Sometimes, depending on the type of housing that they're in, they can, actually request different, law library books in order to do their business there, and they're usually, set inside a small holding area where they can read the book there, make their notations. Sometimes they're provided with access to things like, well, it used to be typewriters way back in the day when I started, but now I think they have access to some printers and to some word processing programs and things like that.
Hey guys, there's a lot of questions here, so I'm going to try to get to them because the
Let's do
problem
a
is I
rapid
can't get to them.
fire.
I know if I can't get to them quick enough, though, the questions disappear. So I'm going through the chat. So I'm going to try to see what I can click. So I'm going to be going back, guys. But I'm just going to try to hit. Is it true it's easy to get written up and fired as a new male officer working at a female prison? Even if you didn't do anything, should you always decline that job offer until probation's over? Okay, so I started my career at a female facility. I worked there for 9 years. It's a little different now because PREA is being weaponized. And unless you have a good investigative agency that is going to really look into the PREA investigations, guys from the outside, PREA is PREA Rape Elimination Act. So an inmate can make an allegation, and they could make an allegation for many reasons outside. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if an allegation is true, you got to do what you got to do. But most of the time, the allegations are done to have some control of operations to some extent. Hey, Russ is doing their job. He's getting a little close to finding some contraband. Hey, Russ touched me last night. Or, Russ said this last night, and now Russ can't have any contact with that inmate or can't have any inmate contact at all until the investigation goes. And you wind up losing the momentum of, maybe what that officer is trying to find out. So we have to realize that, there's great policies in play, but we have to realize that they can be weaponized. So for something like that, I get where Blackjack's coming from. If you have a good investigative authority, if they can investigate the allegation and they find that the inmate has lied, they should be held accountable for that lie. It should be an unfounded result. The inmate should be charged. There's no ifs and buts about it. Only because, again, it's going to stop the game being played and bring some control back to the house. Now, I don't think, like, if you do your job, you're always going to have the allegations. You are. But when you're lately, right now, to be honest with you, if you're working at a female jail and you're a male officer, you're probably going to have limited interaction with them anyway. I mean, lately, what they've been doing is putting females on the floor, and the male officers, may be in the background as part of a response team. Not all facilities operate that way, but some have shifted because, again, it lessens the allegation. But yet, they can still make an allegation against a female. But with that said, if you're a professional, I would still say don't fear it. Do your job. Eventually, the truth comes out in the long run. Trust me, I know it's going to be a headache. I get it. But if your reputation's there, they're going to make allegations because good officers, they're going to make allegations about you. Trust and believe that. Good officers are probably targeted the most for just doing their job. So your question here was, is it true it's easy to get written up and fired as a new male officer working at a female prison? I don't think it's as easy as people may think it is. Because to be honest with you, usually if it goes that far, because at one point, don't forget, officers have rights too. Trust and believe you'll get your job back if administration's dumb enough to fire you on something that can't be proven. So that would be administration. Eventually, you will get your job back because it's never going to hold up in a court of law. The people that do get fired or written up and get brought to that point where they settle, they don't get their job back. It's usually something that they may have done something wrong. A lot of the times, what happens here is people may not know the whole story of something. And so what happens is, let's say something happened to me and I'm getting written up for something. well, I start telling people this is bullshit, this is all I did, and we start believing that, but maybe there is something more. Because usually when that person gets removed and it gets brought to that level, most likely there's something there that the state feels, because admin may have one say in writing the charge, I get it, but they're going to be supported by higher level management, lawyers, and stuff like that to see, is this case going to hold weight? If this officer appeals it, what's the likelihood of this officer getting their job back? And if they feel like there's nothing here, we can't move with this, by the time it gets to the appeal process, guys, you guys are going to get your job back. So I'm going to say that it's hard to protect the allegations. You need a good investigative division to determine that it's false if it is. But I don't think it's that easy to get removed. I really don't. And in the end, just stay professional. If you're dealing with a female inmate, try to always be in view of somebody else. Do what's expected of you. Don't go to work looking forward to seeing an inmate. That's another thing. And if you feel it's not for you, just mentally or whatever, because it is a different game, then, when you can transfer out, if it's possible, or maybe it is not a job for me. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, there's a whole lot going on there. The thing about it is that sometimes the process that you'll be put through is actually, unfortunately, I don't know, I'm not even sure if I want to say this. I would say sometimes the process can be the punishment for something else. But the thing you got to remember is
That's a good point.
you got to stay in there, and you got to fight back. And I never worked at a female joint, so I never had those kind of allegations over my head. But I've had other allegations, and I was just always of the mindset, I'm going in there, I'm swinging, I'm not letting anyone say anything about me that's not true at all. It's a hard thing to stomach, though. Especially for some people, I didn't have too much problem with it until like the very end of my career, where I was starting to get, a little bit disenfranchised about the whole thing. But I would say this: if you feel that you can go into a female institution and that you can be effective and that you can provide some safety and security for the public and for your brothers and sisters and for the inmates there, and you can operate under, challenging and difficult conditions, then you should do that. Me personally, I would not want that kind of drama that comes with that. That's why I stuck with, all male facilities until very, very late in my career. And then when I actually branched out into the juvenile field, we had a co-ed facility with both female and male juveniles, and dealing with the females was rough. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah, I want to add something. I'll leave Brett's comment there because I want to borrow. He said something, or no, it was Steve. Wait, let me go to Steve first, and we'll read Brett's. Steve goes, inmates are never charged on that because management is too worried about being seen retaliating. So first off, that I get it. But let me mention something real quick. Management leans on the investigative authority who's doing the investigation. If the investigative authority doesn't have they don't do their due diligence, and instead, when you have evidence that can totally prove that the inmate lied, if they still find the results to be unsubstantiated, management may be in a tough position. Again, I don't think they're going to get charged. I don't think you're going to charge an officer for non-substantiated. Usually, if there's a charge coming around against an officer, it's going to be, if it's substantiated. If there's a charge for the inmate, it has to be unfounded. So management cannot lean on an unsubstantiated outcome to write an inmate a charge. Because again, in their mind, the investigation has showed there's no evidence either way. So if an inmate makes an allegation that cannot be proven that it didn't happen, it's going to come back as unsubstantiated. And the management is not going to be in a position to write that inmate up. It has to be unfounded. There has to be proof that the allegation was false. And that's going to be dependent on the investigative authority handing management a case and saying, hey, this was unfounded. Then now, if it is unfounded, then yes, management should be looking to charge that inmate because, again, the integrity of the person being accused is at stake at that point. But I just want you to know something, that may not be always management's fault. It may be that this PREA allegation should have been given over to the investigative division, and they came back with a result of unsubstantiated. Well, can we charge the inmate? No, not if it's unsubstantiated. But hey, Russ, they said Russ touched me on Monday. Russ was off on Monday. It could be a lie. At that point, the investigative division would exhaust all efforts, said, yo, inmate lied. This is what their statements were. They detailed these statements out. They falsified during the investigation. They're unfounded. And just like we would get seriously disciplined if we falsify documents, they have to go through that same thing. And again, just want to make sure we're on the same page in who really determines that result and where that charge is going to be. I want to read something real quick because Brett said a PREA coordinator or investigator cannot just dismiss somebody off probationary status if a pre-investigation comes up. The department has to show that they've done more to prevent or stop these situations, and simply dismissing somebody because of an accusation is nothing to prevent or stop rape. So most departments will do a thorough investigation because they're required, not just because they feel they need to. Also, federal regulation will penalize the institution for. Yeah, so guys, Brett's right. So when it comes to PREA, each facility is going to have a PREA coordinator. It should be someone from administration or above. But again, each facility could interpret that differently. When an allegation is made and PREA protocols determined to be initiated, which would be based on the coordinator or some partnership between the coordinator and the investigative division, while the investigation is occurring, you're going to have to take some universal precaution with, let's say, the staff member that's being accused and whatnot, got to do the interview. And then when the results come back in, then we can determine what we need to do. Can we put the person back on post, or, we got a problem, it's substantiated. What do we do now? So, yeah, there is a lengthy process. And with that said, you're going to get allegations. The biggest concern is what you're waiting for is the results of the allegation. That's the key, because you're going to get allegations all day. It's weaponized now. It's weaponized. So the end result is, did the investigative division do their job? Did they give us results that we as management can lean on? And in the end, if the inmate did lie, think about this. That helps the officer gain their integrity back, because the inmate gets charged. One, it shows that, we're not tolerating that. But two, it shows that the inmate lied. Unsubstantiated cases, you can't really lean on 100% of the time, because basically I can't prove it didn't happen, but I also can't prove that it did happen. So it goes both ways. And then you have an officer that could be brought back on post, but, the unfounded case is what you need if you're not doing nothing wrong. And if it's because real quick, you'll have inmates that will weaponize it. They'll make 50 or 60 PREA complaints, and all of them are coming out unsubstantiated. And it's like, well, wait a second. At this point, we can't prove one of them to be a lie, because at this point, where's the credibility? 50 false allegations against Russ, who has a perfect record, but who's also sworn. He has no reason to question his integrity. His word should carry a little bit more weight than the inmate's allegation, especially after 50. But if you got 50 and they're all coming back unsubstantiated, the credibility of the inmate, I don't get it. And then it should be shot at that point. But again, it's the due diligence of the investigative division. It's like, I'm gonna keep on, saying PREA complaints. Hopefully one day something's gonna hit. Hopefully I'm gonna get the officer one day. Guys, if there's a way to prove that one of them is unfounded, if you go that extra mile and see that you could prove that this inmate has lied, they should be held accountable for it, because that will lessen their credibility. Because when it goes to the courts, it's like, well, this inmate has made 50 complaints. And I don't know, man. It seems like that there's some problems at the facility. 50 complaints that were unfounded, ma'am. 50 complaints that proven not to be true. All because PREA protocols ran does not mean that the allegation's true. So, that's what we need. We can lean on unfounded. So when people see 50, we can come back and say, yeah, but all 50 were unfounded. But you need the effort from the investigative division, and then they will give the results over to administration, who can then make the decision and say, guess what? We can charge this inmate. And there's nothing the investigative division can do about that, because their job is only to collect the facts, give it back to management so they can make the decision. And then you need management to do it then. That's the key, That was a good dialogue, and that was a great point by Brett. Good job, Brett. That was a good point. It's not as easy. It's not cut and dry. And personally, I was there when PREA was first rolled out. The promise made was that the inmates will be charged. Yeah, I agree, Steve.
Yeah.
It's something that's got to change.
Here,
Should
one of
Greg?
the things that happened was, and I don't know how this became kind of the thing. They were saying that, oh, we don't want to charge the inmates because then we'll have victims that are afraid to come forward. Me personally, I would like to see every inmate that actually files a false complaint to be sued civilly. But we just don't seem to have people that once it's done, they're kind of done and it's over. I would really like to see that civil litigation take place in small claims court. $10,000 a pop or whatever it is in your state.
All right, so this is a good question. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but Kelsey's asked it a few times. We got to answer it. Men working in female prisons, female working in male prisons. Thoughts and opinions. Okay, Russ, do you want to go first with this?
Sure, Anthony, just put me out there in front of the bus.
I'll go. Hey, I'll jump on this all
No,
day.
I'll
What
do.
do you
I'll
want to
do.
do?
I'll take any hard question out there. Okay, so basically, we are where we are in this thing, and we're not going back. There's. I don't know if you've ever seen. I think the name of the movie was "Women in San Quentin" or something like that, about the first female officer there. That cement ceiling instead of a glass ceiling has been broken and shattered. So you know what we have both sides in both different prisons, male and female. So there's no going back. Are there some things to consider with regards to that? I think yes, because obviously we have seen some potential predators that were maybe looking at the beginning, especially to try and get into those female prisons, or they were put in a position where they took advantage of that. And that's reprehensible and wrong and all of that. Are there a lot of probably false allegations out there too? Yeah, there's probably a big mix of that. Is that a reason to go backwards and change that? Probably not. Maybe we could do a better job now that we're able to get, some body worn cameras and some things like that to try and, prove against that or prove it did happen, whichever way it goes. With regards to, things that happen in the male prisons, you know what? There's a standard, right? If you can meet that physical standard, if you can get through your probationary period, if you can make it through that academy, and it should be a much tougher academy than they're giving people right now, in my opinion. But if you can do all of those things, then you've got the job. Are there drawbacks to some of those interactions and things? Yeah, right now, and it's not a knock on the female officers per se here, but we're seeing institutions and departments that aren't standing up for those females, and they're basically cannon fodder for these inmates to say whatever they want. I never stood for that in the with the females that were under my supervision. They say it to one female, it's the same as saying it to me, and we wouldn't tolerate it. Zero tolerance for that. But these departments with PREA in there and everything else that they should know better, they're letting these inmates say anything they want, do anything they want. And I think that that's a travesty, and it makes it that much harder to get good female help into those prisons. So anyway, is there an answer to all of this? Yeah, we need to become more professional. We need to do more training with all staff, male and female. We need to have better equipment. We need to have better pay. We need to have higher standards for those that have to go in behind those walls of steel and concrete and deal with these knuckleheads.
Yeah, and guys, regardless whether you're male or female, integrity. It doesn't matter the gender, right? So if I'm a male working in a female facility and I have integrity, good core values, it doesn't matter what gender I'm working for. If you have a female working in a male, and don't forget, not all males are attracted to females, and not all females are attracted to males. So technically, if you want to keep it simple, it's how you carry yourself. It's knowing that you have a job to do, and then holding that inmate to that line. We're not here to be personal. Personable maybe, but not personal. So having said that, at the end of the day, you have to always remember that this is your role. This is who you are. And if ever you feel that role's in conflict, then do the right thing. Get out. Tell somebody. Hey, listen, I can't work in the unit with Russ. We're getting a little too close, and don't wait until the inmate gains the leverage. Correct integrity. I care integrity, courage, accountability, respect, and excellence. Yeah, I mean that doesn't perfect right there. That doesn't matter what gender you are. You got to have that coming in. You got to have that 100% coming in, and that will determine, who you're going to be behind the wall. So when people say, "Yo, is it okay for women to work in male facilities or males to work in women facilities?" Yeah, if they have integrity, why not? Why not? You got to realize that when they break the rule, they're not officers anyway. They're done. They chose a side. They're gone. So again, heart, integrity, that doesn't know no gender. So don't do nothing personal. Don't take nothing personal. That's how I've always operated. Well said. I know you've gone over it before, but what's your thoughts on 18-year-olds working in corrections? My state just started hiring them. It's a good topic, Chaos. Good
Yeah.
question. Russ, we'll have you go first.
Okay. So, basically what happens is, when you're a correctional facility or a correctional department, you have a fixed pool of candidates that you can draw from. This is an attempt to try and draw from a bigger pool is all it is. And so what ends up happening is they increase the size of that pool, hoping that they can get people in there because they're, so far, undermanned. Well, the way that they could do better, in my opinion, is, that whole thing, better status, better training, better equipment, better pay. And instead, they've decided to go to the other end and draw from the 18-year-old crowd. Now, I will take some flack for this, but I will tell you this, is that most 18-year-olds are not emotionally equipped to do this. And then everybody says, yeah, but they're equipped to go out there and carry a rifle in Afghanistan. Let me tell you something. It's a whole different ball game inside that prison. And I know it's, more dangerous out there doing what they're doing, but they're doing that under direct and constant supervision of a platoon leader and everything else. You have to be very much a self-starter. You have to have all kinds of, emotional maturity on your side to operate as a correctional officer, because you're doing that from a position of authority and you are your own supervisor on most any given minute. And you are around master manipulators that do nothing but create one victim after another when they're out there on the streets. And if they have a chance to do it inside, they'll do it inside too. So it's not a good environment for someone of that age. So I think that, opening it up that much and having to sort through that many more people that probably aren't as good a candidate at that point in their life actually makes it harder on HR, except they're only looking at it from the point of get me a fresh, warm body instead of get me a fresh, warm body that has some emotional maturity and can more easily grow into this job and has actually has, some work experience behind it that I can look at and say, oh, this person would be a good choice, rather than an 18-year-old that just got out of high school and has never held a job. And I don't know how they're going to act or react. And there's no former boss I can go to. There's no former coworkers that I can use in my background investigation and evaluation on this individual. So think about that. I mean, that's really potentially scraping the bottom of the bucket, because now that person is a completely unknown quantity. I would rather see people, hired at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 and up that have, some background that you can look at, good and bad, and get an idea of how they're going to act and react when they're put into this high stress job and, these high stress situations, and they have to act autonomously. They don't have a platoon leader there to tell them, hey, we're going to fire down range. We're going to, encircle the enemy this way. Everyone get your helmets on, and be told one thing after another to do, because they're not autonomous when they're doing things in the military and they're that young. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. I can just say this, that I've seen a lot of people come in at 21 and not have emotional maturity, and they're a wreck. They have no direction. uh, they're not a good candidate maybe to begin with, and instead they've just been you know fostered on and grandfathered on in, and that person takes up space for a much better, older, more qualified candidate that we just haven't found.
Right, and I want to with Brett Allen. I agree. Most 18-year-olds find it hard to direct a 50-year-old convict, and yes, I mean sometimes you have 50-year-olds that are not mentally. So let's just do this then, because I have to agree with Russ. I believe there has to be some level of life experience to deal with people who have a lot of life experience. So with that said, if we have to do it, which again I'm not for it, but for the people that are working with someone that's 18, got to cultivate them. I know it could be time consuming, but again, these are the people that we're going to have to invest time in, see some level of potential, and really start, cultivating them into where we need them to be. Because if we're not cultivating them, the inmates will. So, if you have an 18-year-old coming in, then maybe we have to step up our game because we can't allow that 18-year-old to fail. That's the problem. We're being put into a situation where, it's kind of like do or die. So I can't ignore the 18-year-old. I'm pissed off that the 18-year-old is here. Don't get me wrong, but I can't ignore them either. So I'm going to have to jump on that, do my best to cultivate that individual and make them where they want to be. And I will say, just to be fair, there are going to be some 18-year-olds that can do the job right off the bat. Let's be fair. There are, there are just like the other, yeah, just like the other one said 50. But having said that, you got to step up. What do you got, Russ?
Yeah, I just got to point out there's another aspect of this with regards to your training department. When you bring in people that are that young, they're more likely to just quit willy nilly for any reason because they really haven't.
Wait, Russ, you're muted.
You muted me.
No, I did it by mistake. I went to put you on solo layout. I hit the wrong
Okay,
button,
there we
Russ.
go.
You're not muted no
So
more. Yeah, so repeat what you just said. I went to put you on. All right, so you guys know I didn't do that on purpose. Solo layout is right above mute. I don't know why they do that, but Russ, can you repeat your thought about that,
okay,
please?
Okay, so when you look at the budgets for your training department, and you think about hiring that 18-year-old, they're much more likely to just quit for any old reason because they haven't invited this thing into their heart as their calling, their profession, their career, as it were. And instead, they're still getting their feet wet, and they're just kind of, yeah, you know what, this really isn't for me. So 3 weeks later, they're gone, and maybe they just spent 6, 8, 10 weeks in an academy or whatever. What's happening to those training dollars, right? You just spent, $30,000, $40,000 putting someone through an academy, and because they're 18 and they just decide, oh, this really isn't for me, I'm good. And this is all because, once again, the background investigator didn't have a metric that he could use in order to assess whether this person was going to be a keeper. And because of that, man, we spent all that money out the window. So that's why it's really important, in my mind, that when you're looking at the size of the pool of the candidates, right, you want to be looking at as small a pool as you can. You want to be able to entice them in with good pay, good equipment, good status, good training, all that stuff. And you want to know that they're a keeper and that they're going to, stick around for the long haul. When you open that pool up and you include all those 18-year-olds, you got no idea what you're getting.
Yeah, guys, I want to add on that too because that's a good point too. Are they going to see it as a career? I mean, guys, there's a lot of 18-year-olds that could come from a strong history of working in corrections. They could be motivated. This could be their passion. Maybe father worked in corrections, mother worked in corrections, whatever it is. And, you don't know what someone's experience is. I mean, generally, we're saying if you're 18 years old, how much experience could you have? But there are going to be some that could have it because they're surrounded by individuals who have worked in the profession. But the key here, though, is that you want people that are going to see this as a career, have that growth mindset, and continue moving forward. And you're right, guys. I mean, people could discover a calling later in life too. I could be 30 and all of a sudden say, "Oh, this ain't for me," and go. So having said that, the only consistent trait really is seeing this as a career, having a growth mindset, looking at the different opportunities. This is more than just a job. There's so many opportunities here. but also cultivating that individual. I mean, that could be anybody. I mean, you could have someone that comes in that's 25 and immature, and okay, well, can't leave that person by the wayside. So let's see what we can do until a point where you can't do it no more. So all I would say is this: in the long run, may not be a fan of it, but in all fairness, let's see how they work out. At the end, we're not going to want them like, oh, because you're 18, I'm not going to deal with you. No, let's just deal with you, see what we can do to, get you to where you need to be. I'm not going to generalize that all 18-year-olds are bad for this profession. But having said that, if they come in, I'm going to invest time in them, see what I can do, and, try my best to be a good role model for them, cultivate some level of growth, and then, at least I'm not going to be a part of if they decide to go negative. You can't base it on us. It's just that person wasn't ready for this job. But again, guys, I'll be honest with you, who really is ready when the job really starts? So let's see. What? All right. So Kelsey asked this question twice. It's from there. I want to. What age is too young to be arrested? That's a tough question to answer, because here's the funny thing. I want people to this may be tough to hear, but it's tough to see a 10-year-old kid, let's say, handcuffed and in shackles. I get it, 10-year-old kid, but we only see the after moment. We haven't seen the crime that they committed or the moment that they've done it. So, having said that, for me, if the person or the child poses a threat to anyone, because I'll tell you something, 10-year-old, though he's such a cute little kid, is still a threat to a 4-year-old. It could be a threat to somebody. So having said that, I'm not looking at who I see outside of that moment. I'm looking at what did this person, the first thing I say is that 10-year-old kid, what have they done to get that? So I'm not automatically like, oh my God, they're 10 years old. There's nothing they could have done to deserve that. No. When I know those shackles are put on a 10-year-old or whatever age it is, the first question I ask is, what could they have done to deserve that? And to be honest with you, if they're a threat to anyone or anything, it is what it is. I mean, it depends on what they've done. Are they too young to be arrested? Depends on what they've done. I'm sorry. There are some, sad to say, but there could be some cases where glad we caught them young. God knows what they would have been, when they grew up to be the size of Russ. Russ is only 12. Hey guys, by the way, there's 12-year-olds probably the size of Russ. Russ worked with juveniles for a while. Hey Russ, what's your thoughts on that real quick?
So you have to look at, what's the alternative to arresting this individual that's at that young age, right? So if there's an alternative, then they shouldn't be arrested. But if there is no alternative, if they present a clear and present danger to someone else, if they present a clear and present danger to themselves, if they're likely to act out and do something, completely stupid, wrecking a train, throwing themselves in front of a bus, whatever it is, what do we do with that individual? We have to protect society, right? That's what we do as correctional officers, is we seal these people off from society to keep society safe. I'm not going to say that there's an easy answer. I just say that there's tough questions that have to be had, and it's up to state legislatures and governors for the most part to decide what the rules are and what the metrics are that we use when we decide we're going to, impose a sentence, when we decide that we're going to bring up charges, when we decide what the punishment is. I think that it's probably evident that there's, a lack of doing smart things on that side. As of late, it's been pretty much just let anyone do anything they want. If you'll notice, the past 2 years, they've let more, that this isn't with regards to young people necessarily, but they've let more cop killers out of prison that have served long sentences than at any time in history before this. And equally so, just as many that, have done heinous, horrible things to other people out there in society, and they've gotten out, and they're out there now. So I think it's a question that needs to be answered, And I think we need to put some more authority back in, separating some of these people from society. But that doesn't mean that the question is easy.
It's not. And one last question. Um, this is a great question. Oh, you know what? Let's do two because Blackjack asked this question. So before we do this question, let's do this question for Blackjack. Hey, Russ, maybe you can help out. What's the schedule like for a new recruit for CDCR? How are my hours and days off? Also, I was told I was going to be given a list of prisons to choose which one would Russ recommend to go to. So, get Russ, you could attack this. This is your area. You're from CDCR.
Okay, so needless to say that back in the Stone Age, when I attended the academy, things were a lot different. I don't know what the academy is like per se now. I've heard that they get to go home at night if they want, but when we did it, we were the very last academy where we had to have our heads shaved and all that fun stuff. But having said that, yeah, usually you'll be given a list, and it used to be like 3 different prisons, and you just called in and said, yeah, I want whichever one is on there. In picking a prison in California, it's really difficult to say what you should do because although all of the opportunities are the same, the living conditions are not. Right now, one that I wouldn't pick, which is my old stomping grounds, which I loved, was San Quentin, which is where I started. But they're really in the process right now of trying to find a way to shut San Quentin down because they really want to sell all of that property there because it's billions of dollars worth of property. So there would be no guarantee. Another big knock on San Quentin is it's right there in the Bay Area and prices there are sky high. If you want to talk about like some of the foothill areas and stuff, man, CSP Sacramento, Mule Creek, Sierra, which was another stomping ground of mine, and some of those others, they're really good if you're kind of more into the outdoor kind of thing. If you want to be a surfer, you can go down to Richard J. Donovan, which is all the way down there by San Diego. But if you're a Central Valley kind of guy, and that's one of your hometowns, Bakersfield, you've got Delano and Corcoran and Wasco and some of those, all great prisons. So it kind of depends on the kind of lifestyle that you want to lead. And so I would look at all of those, and there's going to be availability in all of them. If you're not given the one you want on a list, sometimes you can call up and do a couple of somebody will do you a favor. With regard to what your actual schedule is going to be like, you're probably going to be rotated every 3 months. You'll do first watch, which California is great because California knows that first watch actually starts at midnight, unlike New Jersey where they have some other definition of how 1, 2, and 3 work. It's really odd.
Hey, stop it.
So
overnight
so anyway, you'll go through those. You'll do some time on first watch, 3 months, time on second watch, 3 months, time on third watch, and you'll get rotated through a bunch of jobs. And that'll happen for 2 years while you're in the apprenticeship program. Once you complete your apprenticeship, then you can start bidding into jobs. You're probably not going to get anything on second watch, but you may get something on third watch, which is usually like 3 to 11 or sometimes 4 to 12. It depends on the institution. Some institutions have to adjust their clock because there's so much traffic, like San Quentin, for instance. There's starts at a different time. But you should just always be that individual that goes in there, do every job the best you can, always have your hand up, always volunteer to be doing whatever it is. And, try and get that experience that you can take and build into knowledge that you can apply, and, have a great career, and just always be trying to look at things outside the box. You're going to have a lot of fun. You'll be able to, chase a lot of crime. You'll be able to charge inmates with a lot of felonies. You're going to like it.
All right, guys, last question. Is respect between rooks and senior COs getting better, or senior correctional officers still disrespecting the rookies? Okay, so I've seen some videos recently that, we're losing a lot of people in this profession, but we're also losing the incentive for people to come into this profession. So The thing is we could give all these external incentives, money, whatever it is, but if you don't partner them with a true respectful senior officer who wants to train them, who wants to welcome the new boot in the profession, but in their mind they're disgruntled and just miserable, they're going to push that person out. So a big part of keeping people in this profession is who you're putting them next to, 100%. I know we're going to have disgruntled officers. Now the debate is going to be who's got to move more ground. Is it the rookie coming in that's got to, maneuver around this disgruntled person and accept their fact that they're disgruntled? Or does the disgruntled person have to step up and welcome the rookie in? And there's a balance here. I'll say that right now. A rookie's got to go in humble, be ready to learn, show respect to the senior officer because they've worked the walk. They walked the walk. Oh, thank you, Clayton. I appreciate that. They walked the walk. But I'm going to hold more, and this could be debatable, but I recently saw a video that I felt was the opposite of this. I'm going to hold more on the senior staff member at this point. I get it. You're disgruntled. You're upset. Okay. Not enough people want to work in this profession. Okay. But now you got someone that's coming in purpose driven, wants to learn, but you're miserable. And they put this person next to you, and then you're like, well, there's not enough incentive to keep people in. But we got somebody here right now. They want to be here. They want to be here for the right reasons. And also what's upsetting too is I get that corrections could affect you. I get it. This is an environment that's filled with tons of pressure, right? But also part of you and how you deal with that, how you process that. That matters too. If we're constantly making videos about how miserable this profession is and how it can destroy you from the inside out without maybe showing some level of accountability in regards to how you deal with those concerns, you're also pushing people out. Because there are some people that, yeah, I get this profession could have its pressure, and we all deal with it. But there's some people that have found ways to process it by knowing who they are coming in and knowing what to expect and knowing where they want to be. And therefore, when they have those things in mind, it's very hard for the profession to screw with them because they catch it. They know it. They have a good support system. They know what they've gotten into. Having said that, with the senior officers that push this negativity, but on the other side, they're also pushing that we're not doing enough to get people in. Well, we're also not promoting a positive image then. So with that said, for me, and it could be a little debatable, I think there's a dance. I do want rookies to come in and, want to learn and partner up with someone who, wants to teach them. So I do want them to respect the person that's teaching them through their evaluated experiences. But having said that, guys, I put a lot of that on the senior officers. I don't expect the rookie officer to be able to come in and maneuver and tiptoe around these disgruntled officers. I don't think they want to. I don't think they have. They listen. We're promoting a family and all this other stuff, and we try to do what's right. And then the moment the person gets put next to someone that's disgruntled, I got to tiptoe, and I'm already an outsider, and no, you can't do that, guys. When a person comes into this profession, they are vulnerable. The first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look to belong. That's what they're going to do. And if you keep on pushing that person away, either they're going to find a connection with the inmate or they're going to get the hell out. They just don't have time, especially the people now. People now can research about this job. We can go on Facebook, talk to people that walk the walk, and look at these YouTube channels. So people are coming in with a purpose, a drive. They don't got time to sit there and try to maneuver with someone where it's like, hey, I come in, I feel I could do this. And the person comes back and says, where'd you get that from? This is corrections. There's no value in the work that we do. Well, now what's this person going to do who's been looking? I'm done. So I got to maneuver around that as a rookie. I'm coming in with a purpose, and I go ahead and tell you that this is what my purpose is. I could do something good, and then I for some reason, I get partnered next to a field training officer who's miserable and disenfranchised. And now this disenfranchised officer tells me there's no value in the job. You expect me now as a rookie to stick around or maneuver around this disgruntled officer? No. If you want people to stay in this profession, then we have to really start finding the reasons and connecting to those reasons. Don't blame all these higher levels because, oh, they're not doing enough. They're not doing enough. Well, what have you done when I partnered someone next to you who wanted to be in this profession, who had a reason, who had a purpose, and all of a sudden you're a little angry with everything, and now you just pass that off to someone else? Guys, we are the last hope in this profession. What we do is we focus on something. We're optimistic, not positive. I'm not telling you to shift reality. I'm telling you that there's something on the horizon. There's something there, and it's worth holding on to. And maybe I won't see it in my lifetime, or Russ won't see it, but damn it, we'll keep on trying and keep on trying. The last thing I want to do is to have a venue like this, invite people on, tell them that there's hope, there's good stuff here, and then you get partnered next to somebody who destroys all that in a second. It kills what we do. It kills what Russ does. To me, and I'll let Russ go because this is a tough one for me, because I'm tired of hearing people say that when we get new boots in, they have to maneuver around the disgruntled individuals. No, because let me tell you something. The work in this community, the work in Keepers of Chaos, and everything we're doing is to get people to want to be in this profession. And how do we do that? We do that by saying that when you come in, you will be welcomed. You will be loved. You know, you're going to come in this profession, you're going to be valued. And it gets destroyed the moment you have someone that's disgruntled who just pushes that individual out, and then now we're at fault. And then you know what that person does, and Russ knows this has happened. They message us back and they say, this profession is not what you told me it was, because they have generalized their animosity to this one person who represents this profession. And that one person is probably on social media saying, yeah, we're not doing enough to bring people in this profession. Really? Because here's the funny thing. If I read every one of your quotes, oh, this profession will kill you mentally. The management hates you. Blah, blah, blah this. Blah, blah, blah that. You know, at the end of the day, guys, if you're not making the effort to see the good that this profession has, you're destroying it. That's just my thoughts. Russ, I know this is for you too, Russ. What's your thoughts on that?
Let's just say that I view disgruntlement and being that disgruntled, you know, sour, horrible hater of an individual as a foil and a shield to protect against people from seeing the fact that they are inept at the job that they do. And so they try and spread that poison everywhere to hide the fact that they're no good at this job, right? So you know what? Let the haters hate, but get them out of my way. You know, there's more good work that we need to do out there. I'll take and spend time with anyone that wants to learn about the profession under any circumstances possible. And, you know, but we see it time after time, you know, those old, you know, they're just sour and they want to sour everybody on everything. And you know what? They can't teach that youngster anything because they don't have anything to teach them. Teach them to be what? Disgruntled? Because that's all they got. That's the only card that they've got to play. They can't go out there and show them, you know, how to, take down a housing unit and conduct cuffing operations and find contraband and, to talk people down out of committing suicide and to be able to go out there and be part of a line on a yard that's completely going off and take that yard back 12 officers against 1,000 inmates. They don't have that in them. They have to be directed and told what to do on a constant basis. And then they pretend like they know so much more than everybody else. But, fuck the world. Anyway, off my soapbox now.
Yeah, no, it's true. Guys, before we come to a close, I just want to say something, guys. The reason why that's a passionate one for us is because you have to realize something. We devote time to showing something positive in the profession. It's hard. I mean, creating these videos, and I'm working on a daily reader right now, trying to come up with 365 topics from all these different books I've read and finding a way to apply it to this profession so we can have a positive outlook. There's effort in that. Tons of effort. Tons of effort. It's easy to bitch and moan. Everybody could bitch and moan about their job. But in corrections, we need good morale to survive. We need each other. So the effort is well placed because, if we don't have good morale, if we don't want to love what we do or value what we do, we become sloppy. We stop caring and lives get lost. The more we become disenfranchised, the more we don't appreciate the value in this profession, the more we share that not so appreciation to someone else. We're breeding up practices that are really not in our best interest. I mean, if you see someone that's disenfranchised or disgruntled, I'll guarantee you, I'm sorry, can you trust them in doing their job effectively? It's curious. If they're miserable, do you think they're really doing their rounds? Do you think they care enough to do their rounds? Anybody that's disgruntled, I mean, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, if you feel that there's no value in the job that you're doing, then how do I know that you're doing your job? How do I know? So with that said, guys, as we come to a close, I just want you guys to know it's our job to find something positive in this profession and stay focused on it. That's the key, because in the end, guys, we're losing out on this great partnership, and we're allowing people to think that this negative stigma in corrections. I mean, guys, this negative stigma, this has just been an excuse to just have bad morale. We have to move past it, because in the end, guys, in this environment, if we're not working together, if we're divided, who wins? This is what's worth fighting for. If I notice me and Russ are not getting along and we're separated, and even on a higher level, two departments not getting along, it's incumbent of us to step up and say, how do we get us working together? It's incumbent of me to go to Russ and say, you know what, Russ, I'm sorry for what I did yesterday. And maybe Russ could say the same. Why? Because behind this wall, Russ, I need you. You need me. I could take out some knees. I mean, the point is that we need each other. And it does not start when you partner a rookie next to someone who's disgruntled. It sets out such a bad first impression. Oh, I appreciate that. You have great mentors. Of course, we're always here. I appreciate that. Thanks, Nye, for watching the podcast. But again, that's a topic we could do. I'm just tired of people just taking that and expecting that the rookies have to do this. I put more on the senior cops who know the role better and who have to step up and welcome these officers. And yes, the rookies have to be humble. I get it. But if you get a humble rookie and a rookie that wants to learn, has a growth mindset, has a purpose, is driven, well-researched, well-knowledge, and they partner next to someone that's disgruntled, you're telling me a person like that has to maneuver around the person that's disgruntled? No. Why do I have to go down as a rookie? You got to step it up. Step it up, or you're not in a position to even be next to me then. I one last thing, I'm sorry, because it is a pet peeve. This person's coming in with potential. And you're telling me the person with potential has to maneuver? It's just a great question, Kelsey, because it's a question that it could be rather controversial, but it's one of my peeves. It is. And I thank you for asking it, because, again, this channel, we don't sugarcoat it. We tell it how it is, and whether you agree or not. But you got these people coming in that are ready to work and passion driven and all this stuff, and you're telling me that they have to find their ways to circumvent or move around these disgruntled individuals, as opposed to saying, okay, I get you got 20 years. I get it. And I came here wanting to learn what you've had to have for 20 years. I want to learn that. I want to learn that shared experience. But when the person says, well, my 20 years, I've seen some shit and blah, 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 and I'm disgruntled and all this other stuff. Okay, I get it. The environment can do that. But having said that, you also have to be involved in making sure your mental health is okay, because God forbid you do something wrong at home or whatever it is because of this mental health concern, whatever you got going on, and you want to blame the profession. It's not just the profession, because I'm okay. And I've been in it for 20 years, and I've worked at the toughest of places. And recently I've dealt with staff suicides. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm out there. But it's how you deal with it. It's how you deal with it. And all I'm saying is that if we want to keep people in, then we have to also do what's right. And what's right is look for the positive. Just look for the positive, because we're losing people because all we do is spread negative, and then blame the profession for everything that's gone wrong in life. And I just think at one point, we have to stop doing that, because all that's doing is stopping people from wanting to come in and seeing the positive that we spread on this channel. You know, I'm sorry, Russ. Closing thought on that, Russ, before we go to a full closer. I mean, do you agree with what I'm saying, Russ?
Oh yeah, it's here's the thing, people, is this is a great profession. I loved being in it, but I'm not going to tell you that I loved every minute of it. I'm not going to tell you that there wasn't times where I had to go through some dark stuff. I'm not going to tell you that I wasn't necessarily targeted by inmates, or that I was targeted by administration, that I was targeted by my own union. But you know what? You have to be able to wade through that stuff as you become more and more competent in your role as a correctional officer. Um, sure, there's some tough things that we got to do, but you know what? I think it's worth it. I love being able to rise to the occasion. I love being put forth a challenge and coming out victorious. And in the end, I'm the only one that gets to decide, who's victorious and who's not. And I'll never give up. And I love this profession so much that I wanted to give back. So I founded Keepers of Chaos. I'm a constant contributor on here. I am a contributor on Guardian RFID. Anthony and I have some other irons in the fire, and we'll never stop fighting for you guys. And we just want, you guys to go out there and model part of yourself after us. Always fight for this profession. Always fight for the people that are underneath you. Fight for the new guys coming in. Take a minute to, get that, brand new boot under your wing and lay down the law to him, and, inform him and help him and develop him and cultivate him or her, and try and leave corrections in a better way than it was when you came in. And that's what I hope I've done. I hope I'm doing it even now.
And guys, in my closing thoughts, and you are, Russ, my closing thoughts are, when someone goes to challenge me about this profession and the belief I have, and when we go to sit down and discuss it, I quickly say, if they say, well, what's your authority on it? I don't even talk about my position and where I'm at in the professional world. What I say is, I've had over 1,100 and something videos on YouTube right now. That's not even counting Guardian. And these videos are discussions. These videos are dialogues created in the spur of the moment, because we wanted to hit something and see where the dialogue goes. And you cannot do 1,100 something videos and not learn something. So when people go to challenge me, I've committed myself. And you know what's funny is, everybody has a level of commitment to this profession because the job demands it. But what's that degree of commitment? That's what matters. My degree about this profession, well over 100%. So when you're at 5% or 10%, and you think you're committed, and you finally meet somebody that's over 100%, like right now, my family's watching a movie, but me and Russ wanted to get some content out there. An hour, almost 2 hours here, talking about the profession. Never challenge somebody who has that 110% commitment, because that commitment is about passion, because that's what keeps us here. So again, guys, remember, we're all committed. What's the degree of commitment? As always, guys, the show is Ted. Please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Hey, wait a second. Was I trying to be tough with a Mickey Mouse shirt? Hey, Russ, give me the tough mutter next time when I start going on my pedestal. As always, guys, stay safe.